Islam and Muslim. Islam is perfect because it is what God designed for human being, and God has the ultimate wisdom. Muslims as people are not perfect. They have their faults and they have their problems, and that cuts across all religions. Muslims is not identical to Islam. Christians is not identical to Christianity. Judaism is not identical to Islam. Can we agree on that? People are humans. Second, when we try to assess even the impact of religion on people, even though it could be their fault and their shortcoming, at what point of time are we looking? Whether the history of Islam or history of the West. Take the history of the West. Has the West always been on top? How about the centuries of so-called Dark Ages? It is only after the decline of the Muslim civilization and emergence, of the Industrial Revolution and so on in Europe, that Europe became prominent. So even if you take Europe, or West as we call it today, it hasn't always been like that. There have been ups and downs. By the same token, at what point are we evaluating even Muslims, even though, like I say, they are imperfect? We're choosing the period of time of decline. Has it always been like that? It hasn't. If you look at the history of civilization, even though sometimes it hasn't been as fairly covered, there is ample and increasing recognition by Western historians that had it not been for the immense contribution of science and all discipline actually of pursuit of knowledge of Muslims, Western civilization would have not risen or would have been delayed by centuries. There are many who recognize that now. There was one time where the Muslim cities were the largest in the world. They had the most advancement in all areas of knowledge. Are we to be biased and say, no, true Islam was only in that period, and now again, there's no Islam today, or Islam is not capable? It was capable, but the difference here is this, that some people advanced and progressed by rejecting religion. In the case of Islam, it was the reverse. Before the emergence of Islam in the 7th century, the Arabs were zero on the left-hand side, like the Arabs say, zero al-Shimal, safra al-Shimal. They were nothing. They were good in some poetry and literature and so on, but advancement in terms of knowledge, they were no rivals at all to the either Sassanid Empire to the east or Byzantine Empire in the west. It is because of the emergence of Islam and the constant Quranic exhortation to understand, to demand evidence, to use your mind, to explore the universe. Of course, spirituality, you may not be able to make it experimental, but in area of pursuit, the Quran speaks a lot about that. If you're interested in that, by the way, I can email you. Just email me, Jamal Badawi, one word, at Hotmail. I have a paper that was presented in several conferences called Muslim Contribution to Civilization, its Conceptual Foundation and Historical Manifestation. I believe you can find it also if you go to islamonline.net. Muslim Contribution to Civilization. So the Quran itself was encouraging and inciting people to understand. They came on top, and their civilization continued for almost 1,000 years, but many historians, even Western historians, they say that for 650 years, Muslims were the prominent or among the most prominent contributor to all areas of knowledge. So the evidence is there. So how can we see the connection? When Muslims deviated from the teaching of their faith, they got so engrossed in luxury and this and that, violated their teaching, then they went down. So actually Islam was a force of uplifting, not the downward, unless one only paid lip service to the faith. Since that moderator is not here, so just replace him now.
I did understand your question when you said there was negativity towards the Palestinian resistance and the link to Islam. I didn't catch your comment.
No, what I say,
Palestine is a land for Muslims and Christians as well. They're also undermined in the same
absolutely.
land.
Absolutely. Actually, I've heard various lectures given even by Christians who say that they have the same kind of oppression, they have the same kind of lack of access to their holy places. And I heard lecture from Jews also, even Israeli Jews, who have conscience and are condemning in no uncertain terms the brutality of the treatments of Palestine. All I was saying that we should not take the current event and the current oppression and conflict, because it's not a conflict really between Judaism as such and Islam or Christianity. It is a conflict with a political ideology, Zionism, which is hiding behind Judaism, to the point that anyone now who criticizes even the policy of the Israeli government is automatically with the sword of anti-Semitic, anti-Semitic. So I am saying that this legitimate concerns, legitimate grievances that people of Palestine, Muslims and Christians alike, are suffering from is not a religious war in itself, and does not reflect on what the Quran say about still the hope of better relationship once that oppression is removed. And by the way, from my personal observation, more and more Jews are coming now to understand that the propaganda that Jews are masakin, people who are just want to live in this land, but those Palestinian terrorists and violence and the Arabs are just out to throw them in the sea. Many people are now waking up to the fact that this is nothing but deceptive type of propaganda. So all I'm saying as a person interested in religious studies, not politics, I follow what happened in politics. I'm simply religiously speaking for me as a Muslim. I can see, and I give you a reference from the Quran, that there is a good possibility once this issue of Palestine is resolved in a fair manner, not peace, because the other side of peace is justice. There is no lasting, sustained and sustainable peace without doing justice. Otherwise, it would collapse again. If that happens, I do not rule the possibility of repetition of the times where Muslim, Christians, and Jews were working together in cordiality in spite of their differences. The Quran itself, you know what it says? عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَجْعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ عَادَيْتُم مِّنْهُمْ مَوَدَّةً. It could be, he was talking about the case of conflict at the time. It says it may be that Allah will make between your hearts and those with enmity to you, mawadda, and mawadda is more than love even, it's an intensive form of that. So all I want to say that I want to leave the door open, acknowledge injustices, acknowledge the necessity of removal of those injustices, but not to be tempted because of my sympathy with the persecuted Palestinian to say Jews are always against Muslims, they're the worst enemy. I was just trying to explain that the ayah should not be interpreted just because of the events in a century or less than a century.
We'll try to take questions from some people like to write a question. Some of you will probably just voice the question if you want. Can a Muslim man marry a non-practicing Christian or Jew?